We have very smart people, and we're going to be talking about a topic that is not covered that much because we tend to focus on the beginning of any story. Again, the content, the platform, the distribution, but we're always kind of forgetting that last mile. And we should not, because we're viewers ourselves, right? And when things are not working out, we're annoyed and we churn, or we just simply never come back. And we have found a fix today. And funnily enough, people in this room have a lot in common. So you both are working with Tom from Testlio, but you have a special relationship to Lisbon. And I want you to talk about that, because I don't think enough people realize that a lot of, our video experiences is actually thanks to what you guys do here.
Yeah. Thank you. So that's absolutely right. So it's great to have everyone in the Europe streaming industry here today in Lisbon, but we've been here for a long time now, doing a lot of engineering, supporting this last mile. So I don't know why they don't say that's not important. That's my entire job. So it's what I do for a living, making sure this works in the end.
I said people are not paying attention enough to your last mile. You
Yes.
are, yeah.
So what this last mile means here in my team, we have a team of over 400 engineers here in Portugal. We've been here for 14 years now, building the best of streaming in the world. So we have been quite proud to be part of this cluster that we built here in my city. So it's great to have you guys around today. On my side in Sky, we've been building a lot of platforms over the years. Right now, we are responsible for a big part of what is today Sky Showtime. I think we have Josh here today. That is the responsible of the platform here in Europe, but also Now TV in the UK, Italy, and Germany, and mostly Peacock in the US. Most people don't know that a big part of the technology that powers Peacock, one of the leading streaming platforms in the US, NBC Universal, it's actually built here in Lisbon by several people of my team and other teams here in Lisbon that are also here with us today.
Sylvian, you have a story with Lisbon too, right? There's a relationship.
Yes, it's a bit more recent, but the company itself has 15 years of streaming, more than 15 years. And now we've had an office in Lisbon for a few years now that we keep on growing, and we keep wanting to grow it. And there we have product teams, tech teams supporting the growth of our platforms. We support broadcasters in their streaming ambitions. So in France, we're working with M6, Videoland in the Netherlands, and RTL Plus brands in Germany and Hungary. So Lisbon has been a big part, and Portugal in general, a big part of our growth. So yeah, we're still betting on the city.
Okay, and Tom, you are obsessing over the last mile. Can you tell us what that means, though? Because we're saying this is that last bit that sometimes break, but what are we talking about? Are we talking the video? Are we talking payment? What are we talking about?
Yeah, maybe I'll explain. We've listened to 2 days of how important engagement is, right? And you're competing for engagement. So let's take HeyU. NBCU's HeyU is one of my customers, in addition to these amazing people. So they invest in Real Housewives of London. Who doesn't like Real Housewives of London? I have a Real Housewife in London. And so
okay, no one puts that on LinkedIn.
Yeah, exactly. Doesn't know what the hell. She doesn't even know I'm here. No, so and so Andy Clarkson, who's SVP of product and tech for HeyU, he says, look, the platform has to do two things. It has to play the video and collect the money. Right. So you get them interested in Real Housewives of London and they say, I want to go watch it. I don't think it's the last mile. It's the last 10 feet, right? Their arm's length, either in their phone or their TV. And that TV, and this is Antonio and Ricardo and Sylvian's problem. There's 11 different OTT CTV platforms. They're going back 8 years. They're coming out with 3 releases a year, plus your mobile devices. That's hundreds, if not thousands of combinations. Now you add in languages, countries, in-home networks, payment methods. It's more complex than their in-house teams can handle. So what they do, this is where Testlio comes in. They burst into us. We have a network of professional crowd testers, OTT testers that do this for them and HBO Max and Arsenal and lots of others. And they can burst in overnight, over weekend into testers with those devices in the language with the payment methods. And they wake up the next business hour and they say, here are the 10 issues we found after your internal. And then they can deliver a flawless experience, drive revenue, drive retention, drive engagement. And the analogy I like to use is like e-commerce. I was last week at Merchant Payment Ecosystem Berlin, and Worldline, a payment operator, said 62% of consumers, if they have a broken transaction, they don't make a second attempt. And 39% of consumers in an e-commerce transaction never come back to that retailer. And I bet that's directionally accurate for OTT. So people just overlook it. right? And so as Jonas says, content is king, but platform is queen. Like it's got to work in that last 10 feet. And that's the challenge that makes streaming easy. Like we help make streaming easy for these guys.
So, Antonio, Sylviane, how do you cope with that, right? The fact that you have global scale, you need to be in all of those markets. Like Tom says, every single market has its own specificity. So I assume you're using crowd testers, but how does that, how do you combine that with your QA team? Surely you have a team internally?
Yes, what we've done, and Tom mentioned Ricardo, because that's really a work we do together with tech. We do have QA teams, but there's really a difference between what you're going to observe technically and the user behavior. So the way we split it is with the QA, we're going to look at everything that is technical, and we work with Testlio to expand capacities there in terms of device and use cases. So there are things that are harder to test with our test labs and things like that. And on the product side, we're going to look more at how we make the experience ready for the user. And there we're going to work again with Testlio, but different kind of cases. So it's really expansion of activities that we run and also pushing the boundaries on use cases where we would naturally have a harder time going after.
Yeah, it's a complex ecosystem, as Tom explained. So especially if you go to live TV and large scale, and I will talk a bit about that in a moment. And you cannot trust a single solution for this, right? This is a typical engineering challenge. You need to do a multi-layered approach. And the way we do it, we use all the tools that are available in the stack, right? So from high levels of automation to, of course, also manual testing to a big investment in telemetry that's frequently overlooked when we talked about quality, because it's the only thing that matters in the end if it's working at our customer's house, right? Whatever, irrespective of how many testing you do before. And of course, we also rely on crowd testing for this. It's a combination of all these layers that enables us to be with an excellent top product quality at the scale we operate.
So you mentioned live. I think that's a great segue because this must be stressful on your platforms and your teams. So given who you work with, so you mentioned Peacock, they just had the Olympics. I think they have NBA games now. So how do you prepare for events like that? Because you're building a platform that people are using daily, but you have those high stressful, moment, a high impact moment. What do you do?
Yeah, absolutely. So we just came out of what we call legendary February internally. I'm not sure if you use the term externally, but anyway, you can quote me on that. It's fine. Because we had 3 major events during the same month in February. We had the Winter Olympics in Milan Cortina. We had the NFL Super Bowl, the final of the NFL season, very important in the US. I know in Europe we don't pay much attention to that particular kind of sport, but also we had the NBA All-Star Game, all in the same month. So we're talking about hundreds, thousands of live events during a month, some of very high visibility and importance. So how we can ensure all this works fine when the users, our customers, get to the platform. There's basically 2 answers for that. There's the short, simple answer and the long one. Okay, I'll give you the short first. The first is you prepare and you do all the boring stuff. There's nothing interesting here, right? And you need 1 year to do it. You start preparing this 1 year ahead. You build all the features. We go there and test everything with all the layers. We discuss that. It's pretty boring. Everyone can do that, right? The difficult part is how do you get good enough to do it successfully? And that the answer, my friends, is 10 years. You need 10 years of this. And what you do during those 10 years is very simple. You pick up passion. You need a team with passion to do this because this is extremely difficult. And then you convert that passion over 10 years to craftsmanship. That's how long it takes to do something like we did now in legendary February. It's not an overnight success. And that's what people often overlook. You can't hire your way around it, right? You can just pick up talent, hire it from somewhere else and make this happening. Okay. So if you want to take some message here from me today, take this one, please.
Tom, how do you typically support, Sylviane and Antonio's team in big moments like that? What can you add to the mix?
Well, I used to be a Comcaster and they used to say, you're only live once, right? So there's a lot of work that goes into that, Katerina. And so we do have a live stream testing service. So we do, the MLS games on Paramount Plus and pay-per-view boxing on Fox and so forth. So we do have a live stream support team for Super Bowls and things, but mostly it's just having testers in the right locations to say, are these analytics firing? It is because analytics is basically code, right? So, but you need somebody in that market looking at their TV with Charles proxy logs and Wireshark and saying, is this analytic firing properly? Is the ad inserting? Because if it doesn't in the Super Bowl, that's millions of dollars of lost, right? And let me tell you, Testlio does not cost millions of dollars. So, it's a huge ROI to just prepare for that. And then you can have, during live events as well. But it's just supporting their passion and craftsmanship, really, and being I like to say Arsenal does a lot of their Arsenal, Chelsea, Premier League, they're all customer of mine. They say, we used to test on our fans. You give me fans who test. And so that's what we do. So they're like, we know it works across the globe before we have to push out a live event.
So we spoke about, launching a new service or, managing big live events like that. But something that happens also more and more is migration, right? And Sylviane, you're in the midst of that. So essentially, for the non-techie, I'm non-techie, maybe you're techier than I, but, someone was running on one platform, it needs to run on someone else's platform. How do you make that happen without, breaking the experience? Because these people are subscribers already to that offer.
Yes, and the challenge is when you're migrating, people have a reference. So they have their current platform that they're used to. They have all their habits, and sometimes it's years of habits. And there, the challenge is that it's not just by looking at some technical KPIs that we'll see those problems. So what we do is first we start early. The way we started working on this is really a year before, starting to look at first user signals. It might seem counterintuitive because at that moment you don't have all the features, but you start getting the signals. And when you redo those testing, you see how it improves. It helps also with prioritization, identifying frictions early and guiding where do we need to highlight to match user expectations and their habits that they used to have. So it's really down to that journey to be able to say, okay, this is how this is going to inform us to make decision and minimize frictions. The platforms will be different, so it's not about copy pasting, but really satisfying users' intent when they migrate to the new platform.
Can you help with that? Do you do the same?
We helped Sylviane. To her credit, she leveraged our usability testing where we had a panel of moderated testers in Germany looking at the wet cement still, and giving them feedback that they could, help bridge that, what they were used to and what they were going to get. We've done a lot of migrations. It's sort of a one-time event, but it's important. Like we helped Antonio migrate Now TV over to his platform, and now we'll help you migrate Now TV Germany because it's public that RTL bought it over to Bedrock's platform, and we've helped. So migrations are interesting because you need to have actual testers in the country with, it could be like, do you have somebody in the Isle of Man who can use their payment method and subscribe to Now TV? Because Isle of Man is not technically part of the UK, but it has Now TV.
Complicated. It's
complicated, right? So we can get you that tester, but do you have a UView box? Do you have a Freely box? Do you have a Zego set-top box in the Netherlands? Can they pay with Ideal? All that sort of migration and launching, but it changes all the time. So we're testing every 2 weeks with the releases. So it's not, migration is like a big live stream event. It needs to work. And I have Now TV, and I kept waiting for it to change, and it was so smooth. I didn't have to log in. And it took her a lot of work to make that happen, but it was seamless. So it really just takes practice, execute, right?
Antonio, any advices?
I think this is really simple. I think my peers here in the panel covered it really well. So you just need two things for a successful migration, in my view. The first one is you need to get the basics right. You need to test it. You need to make sure that the users, you can bring them through the journey, right? And make sure that you keep the credential sign-in, those kind of things, right? That are the basics you need to get right. Otherwise, you create a lot of friction and unnecessary noise. This is simple, okay? And the second one is a bit harder. You need to have a better app. If you have a worse app, you won't have a successful migration. As simple as that, okay? So if you migrate one app that was not very good to an app that's better, it's easy. Well, some people will complain, but in the end, everything will go up. Your ratings will go up. Your engagement will go up. I've been fortunate enough to be most of my career on that side, not always, okay, to be fair. But that's it. You really need to have a better app if you want a successful migration. Otherwise, wouldn't that be a good story?
I think that's an interesting topic because we are often comparing the global players and the local versus regional and who's state of the art. What are you guys seeing right now in terms of, does doing cloud testing is helping you to be perhaps even more relevant, because even more localized? Because localization is, we say localization, people think, it's in the right language, but there's, as you said, there's more to it. There's the payments, etc. There's even some cultural aspects. There's things that, when I use a Dutch service, I just don't get it. I'm a French, maybe I'm dumb, I don't know. But there's a few things like this where your work is even more important. You don't see it to the naked eye. So how do you, level up to the big guys? And we have to say that, Netflix has been kind of that reference for everyone. And how do you, also play your card of being, local and regional players who really understand the region perhaps better than some of the global guys?
I can't answer that because we are the big bad guys.
You are not. Because you are an American company?
Yes, because we have a very large platform with a lot of usage. So, yeah.
So then, Sylviane, you're a regional player. What are you saying about the big bad guy here?
Yes, I'll take it then. Look, there's the element of scale that you mentioned, where they're going to play on the numbers and the volume of users, and that's for sure. Still, within Europe, we support more than 50 million users using our platforms, and what we're trying to achieve is to enable our clients to play on their strength. So we're talking about local broadcasters, and some of those strengths are first the local stories and the touch that they have with the pulse of their audiences, because they still have their broadcast angle. So we need to provide them with editorial flexibility to enable that personality to come through the product. And the second thing is really the diversity of all these content that we provide on the platform. We have entertainment and news, live and VOD, obviously, but also audio and video. And our goal is to make all of these experiences feel simple, intuitive, yet still premium to the user. And at the end, they find their content, and that's the job done. So the local sound, that's really something we want to give room to, and the diversity for users to find the content they were coming from.
Because RTL Plus is a great example, and there's not a lot of an example of streaming platforms that are exactly that truly multi-vertical. So it was a broadcaster. So yes, you have live, you have on demand, but it became a streamer. So you have a massive catalog. But not just video. You can watch, you can read magazines, you can listen to podcasts,
audiobooks,
listen to music. I think it's a whole, so we can be local and be a mastodont in terms of experience.
Yes.
So we have just a few seconds to go. And I want to say, we're talking about the big things that break. So we can't see the video, the payment doesn't work, etc. But, in terms of maintaining your platform, always keeping an eye on everything running smoothly, are you looking for certain signals, tiny signals? And I'm thinking perhaps, app reviews, things like that are, perhaps an indication of something that doesn't work or something that people would be interested in having on your platform, and that could potentially not dictate, but help you roadmap future features, etc.
I can answer from a technical perspective. So I can tell you a funny story to the level of telemetry we need to have to operate a big platform. We had a problem a few years back that was just affected a tiny, very specific location in Texas. And we didn't know what was going on. There was like some degradation in the video performance. And we happened to see the next day in the news that was some guys that stole some copper cable from some broadcast thing. So we noticed that. So if the network in the US sneezes, we know about it. Okay, that's the level of telemetry you need to have. I'll defer here to my peer to talk a bit about the product side, and I'll let you cover that one. I think you're more qualified than
I guess on one side, you have the fundamentals, because obviously looking at reviews, behavioral data, and all sorts of signals, this is the foundation of being able to understand what's happening on the platform and supporting us prioritizing things. However, there's always this gap between people will always look at incremental improvement. So we also need to be careful regarding disruptive changes, because these will not be in the reviews. Nobody will ask for disruption. And there we need to look at the global picture, what's happening in socially, also habits, etc. So to avoid becoming the horse that runs faster, if you have the quote, there it's a different approach and looking more where do we feel like these things are going to do bets. But on a daily basis, for anything incremental, obviously the signals are food, bread and butter.
You don't want to mess with the foundation just for the sake of, innovation.
At least you have to look at it from not being in your own position. Otherwise, that's how disruptions happen. And the voice of the user is understanding the underlying problem. Because yes, they will only ask for what they can imagine. Nobody's ever going to voice what doesn't exist yet that might answer to their needs. And there we need to, dig a little bit deeper.
Okay, last word for Tom.
Well, I think earlier somebody said the average consumer has 5 streaming platforms. So every streaming consumer comes with a framework in their mind about how their streaming services. And it could be from, Sky NBC's, it could be from Netflix, it could be from YouTube. They have a perspective. So I would argue the most important resource they have is their video engineering talent. They have to constantly speed up their product development lifecycle. So what we can do is we can speed that up by testing overnight over weekends, give them 0 business hour testing. So while they're asleep, they wake up, they give us the build on Friday, they wake up in the morning, it's been tested in 50 countries. Here in Jira are your 10 issues, they can fix it. And they're not wasting engineering time. Like when I was at Comcast, a VP saying, it didn't work for me. All the engineers went into a room for a day and have to figure out why it didn't work, because that's not enough information. We give them videos, logs, this isn't working. So I think the signal is how fast your development cycle can keep up with customers' expectations set by your competitors.
I love it. Thank you, everyone. That's it for us. The team is going to be around, so let's give it a round of applause.
Thank you.